So we kind of jumped into the second half of the book of Revelation 5. I mean, we're talking about the proclamation, but we really haven't talked about what they're proclaiming, even though we think we know already. But so I guess we're here. So we're talking about verses 8 through 10. We talked about the book. I guess I'll just talk for a few minutes about the new song because it says they sing a new song. Um, I don't know, did anybody get a chance to look at any of that? Did follow kind of pull that thread?
The Song of Moses and the Lamb, or the Song of
Yeah,
the
that's
Lamb.
Revelation 15.
Yeah,
The other new song is actually in Revelation 14, which is significant, obviously, that it connects Revelation 14 here to Revelation 5. Um, and in both Revelation 14 and Revelation 5, the Lamb is standing. In Revelation 5, he's standing in the midst of the throne. In Revelation 14, I'm sorry, he's standing on Mount Zion. And so you have the new song is taking place when the Lamb is standing as king, and he's actually being worshipped as king. That's what the new song is all about. And that Revelation 14 is unique in that that's the only place in the book of Revelation that the phrase Zion is used. And according to Psalm verse 2, the Lord installs his king on Zion, his holy mountain.
yes.
So Revelation 14 is a confirmation of his installation as king. Uh, only in Revelation 14 is he's standing at the porch. And of course, that's when he becomes visible to the congregation. So if you want to look at the new song, you want to understand the new song, it's very interesting that besides the book of Revelation in the New Testament, the new song is mentioned, guess how many times in the Old Testament?
Seven.
7 times, yeah. And so if you look up those references to the new song, was it Psalm 33, Psalm 96, Psalm 98, Isaiah 42, Psalm 149, and I think Psalm 144. If you look up those references to the new song and you read the context of the references, you're going to find that each of the references to the new song is in the context of the king, and it's a song of praise to the king. It's obviously connected to the Feast of Tabernacles because that's the coronation of the king, and they're singing praise or worship to the new king, and that's why it's a new song because he's the new king, or he's the
It was,
king who makes all things new.
it was interesting this past week. I often, for music, I listen to FBC Radio online, which is Foundations Bible College, which is like a non-denominational uh, uh, Christian organization. They have really good music. Um, Brother Deriba here told me about them, but they sometimes have some preaching on there, and sometimes I listen to see their perspective. And they were talking about Revelation 15 and the Song of Moses and the Lamb, and the guy said something that I hadn't really put together quite that way, and I thought it was pretty interesting that he came up with it. He said the Song of Moses was a celebration of victory over your external enemies, but he said the Song of the Lamb was the song of victory over the internal enemy. I was like, wow, he gets it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, praise
Yeah.
the Lord.
Well, and you'll notice I've just turned to Psalm. I'll just choose one like Psalm 96, 97, 98, 99. That's a little book of songs. And it's a call to worship the Lord, but all that little book, they're all singing the same songs in the same context. There's 5 books in the Psalms, and okay, so if you look at Psalm 96 and Psalm 98, there's a reason why they're together. But you'll notice in Psalm 96, for example, um, first I'll mention the kingship aspect of it. It says in verse 10, it says, say among the heathen. In other words, you're proclaiming among the heathen that the Lord reigns, and the world also shall be established, it shall not be moved, and that he shall judge the people in righteousness. So, verse 10 of Psalm 96, it talks about him reigning, him becoming king, and then it's in the context that judgment takes place. He's going to judge people. By the way, that's verse 1 is the new song, right? Sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord all the earth. Show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen. So there's this idea that he has become king, and now they're singing a new song, and the new song is a proclamation of the glory or the character of this new king. And then if the heathen listen and receive him as their king and worship him, then they too become part of the kingdom. So the new song is connected to the first angel's message, the proclamation of the glory of this new king, who, by the way, happens to be the creator of everything and the maker of everything. And you can see, uh, the first angel's message, it keeps talking about giving glory to God, verse 7 of Psalm 96. And then, of course, you're worshiping the Lord in verse 9, the other part of the first angel's message, to worship the Creator. And then, of course, it says that He created all things, um, that He established the earth. Um, So if you look through verse 13, it ends, it says, be, uh, be joyful before the Lord. Then it says, before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He shall judge the world in righteousness and his people and the people with his truth. So the idea is very clear that he's coming out. He's coming out of the temple, or he's coming out of his palace. He's coming out, and there's a proclamation or a declaration of his glory. And then, of course, the judgment actually is the revelation of his glory or his character, and then people choose. That's their judgment. They choose to worship him or they choose not to worship him. You see, Psalm 97 is going to carry the same idea.
I was just going to say, it seems with the reference to the proclaiming to the heathen and the multiple references to all the earth that this is speaking especially about the third group.
Well, yeah, actually, it's describing all three groups, right?
Okay.
Because it's the same process that happens to each group.
Okay. Sure.
So, yes, but I mean, you can try to identify if you'd like, but the idea is that the proclamation goes out and then every tongue is going to confess. It's going to go to every nation, tribe, language, and people. But of course, it starts at the house of God, right? So you see, Psalm 97 starts the same way. The Lord reigns, let the earth rejoice, let the multitudes of the isles be glad. So there you go. So there's the earth, and there you have the isles, right? And then, of course, it talks about the clouds of darkness, and then righteousness and judgment are the habitation of his throne, and that, he's going forth and the judgment is taking place. So Psalm 97 is going to repeat the same concepts, the same idea. Now, it doesn't mention the new song. That's mentioned in Psalm 98, verse 1, which is the next psalm, is going to say the same thing. Again, it begins in verse 1, sing to the Lord a new song, and then it talks about his victory. And by the way, that's what I was telling you before. At the second coronation, at his second coronation, then that's when the king begins to exercise his kingly authority. So that's what's happening here. And of course, it says in verse 6 that they're with trumpets and the sound of a cornet, they make a joyful noise before the Lord because he's the king. So they tell you why he's the king. And then, of course, um, it tells, again, Psalm ends in verse 9, he's coming to judge the earth. With righteousness, he's judged the world and the people with equity. So again, throughout the psalm, you see the idea of worship and praise. You see the idea of worshiping God because He's the creator and sustainer, or He's also obviously the redeemer. So the new song is literally the song that is sung when He becomes king. And it's a new song because He's a new king. The world has a new king. You see the same thing in Psalm 99. You can see how the Psalms are all kind of repetitious in terms of saying the same idea. Psalm 99, the Lord reigns. Uh, and then verse 4, the king's strength also loveth judgment. So he executes judgment and righteousness in Jacob. So the new song is all about the context of Christ becoming king. And then the judgment that takes place once he becomes king. By the way, that's what I've been trying to share. That judgment is actually the judgment of the living that takes place, as you know. So if there's a proclamation of his glory and the people that see that revelation have to make a choice, then obviously they're living. They have to be alive to do that. And that, by the way, is the context of Psalm 100, where you hear a lot. I usually hear a lot about Psalm 100, about singing to the Lord and making a joyful noise. But really, the truth is that there's talking about the new song. And it instances, remember we talked about he made us kings and priests in Psalm 100. Know ye that the Lord he is God, he hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. So it's the king who recreates or restores us, his image in us. So he has made us. So he didn't not just make us the first time, but he made us when he redeems us. Yeah, so if you look at the new song ideas, and this is what I mean, like pulling threads. If you look at the reference in Revelation 5 or any part of Revelation, and you start pulling at that thread, and you start looking wider in the book of Revelation than wider in the Bible, it starts painting the picture of the symbol that it's using in Revelation and explaining what that symbol means. And what you're going to continually find over and over and over again is that the reference to the kingship is just it's just weaves throughout the whole book. And every one of these little threads, you're going to find the same the same eternal gospel that accompanies the revelation of the King. And of course, why would you not? Because the whole book is about the revelation of Jesus Christ, right? So, by the way, that gives us insight into the Song of Moses and the Lamb. If you notice, and we're jumping to Revelation 15, but in the Song of Moses and the Lamb, you realize that it's the first angel's message. Great and marvelous are your ways, O Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, the King of the ages. Who shall not fear you, O Lord, and give glory to your name? For your righteous acts or your acts of judgment have been revealed. So the Song of Moses and the Lamb is literally the first angel's message, which of course makes sense. It's the eternal gospel. So throughout the book of Revelation, you continually see other places that clearly identify the first angel's message. And then when you get to obviously Revelation 14, 6 and 7, then it makes sense. It's that's the revelation to that specific group. But every group has the same revelation. It's the same revelation of Jesus Christ that causes them to choose whether they're going to worship him as their creator and submit to him, or they're going to remain in rebellion against him and worship themselves other things as God. So it's the same process that happens to each person, but the way the light shines, God reaches each person with the mindset that they have. I think that was that when I grasped that, that was one of the keys that really helped me to understand Revelation, because then you begin to realize that you're actually seeing different manifestations of the same principle, but it's different because you're dealing with whether it's the people or the nation or the languages. If you deal with the people, you can deal with the language of the scriptures. If you deal with the next group, then there's cultural connections, but there's a different mindset. And then of course, when you go to the outer core and you're dealing with the different languages, you're dealing with totally different culture thing, different language, so that the wording it has to be it has to be said to meet the mind that he's trying to reach. And that's why the same thing or the same process is described in different words to different people, because it has to make sense to them.
Mm.
So just like us as Adventists, for example, you and I can talk the language of the sanctuary, and we could talk right in front of other Christians, and they would look at us like we lost our mind. They're not so sure what we're trying to say, right? But if you're talking to an Adventist, explain it, you'd say it one way. If you're talking to a Christian, you'd say it a totally different way. If you're talking to someone who's in the world and has no idea of Christianity, you'd say it a totally different way. But you're saying the same thing because there's only one eternal gospel, only one way of salvation. Thoughts, ideas, questions?
Yeah, let's go back to Revelation 7:9. That song, it's talking about the people, kindreds, peoples, tongues. They stood before the throne and the Lamb. And then down further, salvation of God, and they cried out. And again, it talks about God sitting on the throne. And then all the angels stood about the throne and about
Right.
the elders. And then they fell down before the throne on their faces. So it's like there's standing of the multitude or something.
So yeah, so Revelation 7, like I said, Revelation 7 is the sixth seal, right? So it's
Yeah.
going to give you the overview of the whole process of the next group, and then so it deals with the numbered group, and then it's going to go and deal with the great multitude. So those are the two groups that are
Oh,
left,
okay. Oh, okay.
right? So
Yeah.
it starts with specifically the number that are sealed and gives you each specifically of the 12 tribes that are listed, right? And then after the numbering of the 12 and the 12,000 for the 12, then it goes into the great multitude because those are the two groups left. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Well, I was just confused on the standing part, because we keep focusing on Christ as standing to be the king. He's taken the throne. And here the people are standing.
Yeah, and that's right. That's fine. The part here that you see keeps saying is that it keeps saying that they stood before the throne and before the Lamb. And then it says, salvation belongs to our God, which sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb. And so what Revelation 7 and then verse 17 says the same thing, the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne. So what happens here is that the God and God and Christ are on the throne together is what
Yeah.
that it keeps stressing because that's the transition that has taken place. That's why there's a new song because Christ has a position he didn't have before. He's now on the throne as God. So this is why there's a call to worship him. And that worship is going to go to all creation because he created everything. So the emphasis here is that he sits on the throne, God sits on the throne, and the Lamb sits with him.
Okay.
By the way, this is important because this is the way the book of Revelation 5 ends the same way. Revelation 5, of course, Revelation 5 begins with Jesus at the right hand of the throne, and then at the end, in verse 13, power be unto him that sits upon the throne and unto the Lamb. So it connects the Father upon the throne and the Lamb upon the throne. That's what it's saying. So Revelation 7 is going to emphasize the same thing.
Okay.
And by the way, Revelation 7 is Feast of Tabernacles imagery. And that's obvious, right?
Verse 17, lead them to living fountains of water.
That's right. And then he's going to shade them so the sun doesn't strike them by day, right? So that's Feast of Tabernacles. He's literally their tabernacle. He tabernacles over them. It uses the imagery of the cloud by day and the fire by night.
And I bet there are 7 references to the right hand in Revelation.
Well, there is, yep.
But they're all done by Revelation 5, right?
Well, except the last one, the last reference to
Except
the right
for
hand.
the beastly one. Yeah.
Right, Revelation 13. That's not connected to Christ, but
Interesting.
yes. But there's no reference to the right hand in terms of Christ or his people after Revelation 5, which makes sense because he's not high priest anymore. Now he's king. The rest of the book of Revelation is going to constantly refer to him in kingly language. So the only place you see Christ as high priest in Revelation really is Revelation chapters 1 through 3, and then the beginning of chapter 5. And then he's placed on the throne, and then you don't see it again. No, the only reference to priest after that are us. Because when he becomes king, then we're exalted as priests. We're his messengers to the world. We're the John the Baptist, who by the way was the son of Zechariah, a priest.